G'day everybody, it's Dave from Wing Chun Mind Force. Hope you're having a great week. Today I'd just like to share a page from a very special book. Apparently it's quite rare now. I bought this in 1998 when I lived in Sydney, and it's called Wing Chun, 116 Wing Chun Dummy Techniques as demonstrated by Grandmaster Yip Man. And it's written by Master Yip Chun, Master Yip Man's son. And technical advisor is Dr. Loon Ting. It says, the only book teaching you the complete set of the real Wing Chun wooden dummy techniques and their applications. When I bought this book, I'd only been training in Wing Chun for around about a year. So the dummy was somewhere off in the distance for me. We have always been pretty strict about getting on the dummy. You don't really do it much until you sort of really, you're supposed to know the three forms well and have a good standard of power generation and all the things that need to be known before you can really apply that on the dummy. That's the idea. Otherwise you can just end up being a dummy whacker, which anyone can do, and I guess in the end it doesn't matter if you want to whack a dummy. But anyway, this was the first time I was able to see how the dummy was performed, because no one ever practiced the dummy at the school. I always assumed that it went on in secret at night when all the really senior guys got together and practiced the dummy form out of our sight. So this book has also got a fantastic collection of stories about Master Yip. It's got these step-by-step photographs and talks about it, and you can sort of see in those videos that are out there from the Yip Man Tong in Phat Shan. These photos maybe were taken at the same time, though Master Yip looks a little bit younger in these. Anyway, these is extremely cool thing, and it came with this free how to make your own wooden dummy, and it's got a poster which I've always intended to frame. I must get into it and frame that. So that's Master Yip's dummy, and I assume it's somewhere. Maybe it's in Phat Shan, maybe it's in Hong Kong, but it gives you an idea of how the dummies were made and dimensions, and you know, for people that haven't seen it before, it was pretty astounding. I've got a bit of a scheme to build one of these, a dead Wing Chun dummy, the dead wooden dummy. It says the dead wooden dummy is a very long stake of which the greater part is embedded into the ground. This type of dummy is more or less inert and is advantageous for strengthening the bridge arms and legs. It also allows the trainee to experience powerful charging forces, as it does not react in any way to blows landing upon it. Requiring a garden or similar place to set it up, the use of this type of dummy is gradually beginning to decline. So I've got an area in my yard that I think's perfect for it. So now I'm just looking around, looking for a big hardwood tree trunk and working out how to preserve the things as it doesn't rot in the ground. It's quite an exciting project. Obviously, I'll tell you about that as it transpires. I'm also about to finally finish, after about 5 or 6 years, my 11-foot pole. Actually, is it 12 foot? Anyway, it's a full-size pole, the same as Master Yip Man used to use, and Sigong Chushong Tin has seen demonstrating it a number of times on videos. Actually on this channel, actually on my Facebook page. In the past I've shared videos that came from Lindy Scott in Adelaide, who shared this wonderful martial arts expo that happened in 1988 for the bicentenary of Australia, and Sifu Jim organised for Qigong to come out, and they put on this really, really cool demonstration, and you see Qigong with the big pole, and I'll talk more about that, but I'm just going to read you this page 100. Now, I'll just say, last thing I'll say before I read is I became a fan of Bruce Lee's in 1967 watching The Green Hornet. I was a huge fan of that show, and I loved Kato. And as an enthusiastic, athletic 9-year-old, I used to just imitate his moves and practice it. So, in, sort of a real way, I was actually doing Kung Fu back in 1967, copying Bruce Lee, just doing what I saw him do. Then, when I rediscovered him in the mid-70s, about 75, first saw Bruce's movies, I started collecting everything I could get about Bruce Lee, and I learnt about Wing Chun, I learnt about Master Yip Man, and in my young enthusiasm, I considered Master Yip to be my Sifu. I just so much wanted to know Bruce Lee, even though he'd already passed away at that stage, but and Master Yip had passed away as well. But sort of spiritually, I always considered Master Yip my Sifu back in the 70s and the 80s. And I even met him a couple of times, believe it or not. I met Bruce and Master Yip Man in dreams 3 times. And maybe I'll tell you about that sometime. But I believe that dreams can be very significant. And I'm also open to the idea that perhaps you can meet people who've passed away when you dream of them. Maybe. Anyway, I'll read this. It's titled Offspring of Kung Fu Generations. It says, Grandmaster Yip Man's father, that is my grandfather, was named Oi Do. He was in fact brought up in a family of generations of merchants. My grandfather himself once ran a shop in Hong Kong. My grandmother, then known as Madame Nung, was praised for being a helpful wife and a good mother. Anyway, the Yip family in Fat was a famous and influential family. The inherited large farmyard was situated at a newly rebuilt avenue called the Fuk Yin Avenue, literally meaning Avenue of Happiness and Scholarship. That sounds like a good place to be, doesn't it? The homesteads of the Yip family occupied a large area with 2 symmetrical rows of large old-fashioned houses, amounting to not fewer than 20 in number, lining along the 2 sides of the avenue at exactly the site of the present municipal government house. The ancestral temple of the Yip clan was situated at the centre of the homestead. It was in this ancestral temple that the great Grandmaster Chan Hua Shun, the renowned Wing Chun practitioner, had for quite a long period resided, when he admitted disciples and taught them skills of the Wing Chun style. Among the students of Grandmaster Chan Hua Shun, there was one by the name of Yip Man. For the first time in his life, learning Wing Chun skills in the ancestral temple of his family. That's pretty romantic stuff, isn't it? It's got that beauty of those old films most of us love from the 70s, the 60s, Jackie Chan films, that old romanticised China and the idea of having a family temple that went back many, many generations in this avenue where all your family lives with 20 houses and learning Wing Chun right there. How cool would that be? And one assumes there'd be cherry blossom trees and all that cool stuff. So the next little chapter is called A Gifted Student of Martial Arts. At the age of 9, Yip Man, my late father, was admitted as a student by Grandmaster Chan Hua Shun. But before that, as my grandmother, the late Madam Nung, said, Yip Man worked hard on his studies. After receiving each lesson, he seldom wasted his time in having games with fellow playmates, but devoted all his spare time in writing poems and painting, or watching Grandmaster Chan teaching his students. Day after day he watched and became gradually interested in techniques of Wing Chun. At last he went straight to Grandmaster Chan Hua Shun and requested him to admit him into his Kung Fu class. Grandmaster Chan thought the boy might only be joking, so he said jokingly that every boy, in order to be admitted, had to pay an initial admission fee of 3 taels of silver. And if the boy had 3 taels, that's taels of silver, a weight of silver, he would admit him. On hearing this, my father rushed home, filled with pleasure and hope. Soon he brought back 3 taels of silver as required. Grandmaster Chun was surprised to see what the boy had done. He asked the boy how he got the money. The boy answered that he had already known that he needed 3 taels of silver for admission, so he began saving money some years ago. Grandmaster Chan Hua Shun did not believe in the boy, thinking he must have stolen the money, so he did not accept the boy as his disciple. Neither did he return the money to the boy, saying, "If you want to get back the money, you have to bring your mother here to prove that the money really belongs to you." Yip Man, the boy, could do nothing but urge his mother to come to the martial arts tutor. When meeting the boy's mother, Chan Hua Shun said, "I did not suspect the source of the money. It is only that I want to see his mother and speak to her personally and ask whether she really allows her boy to learn Kung Fu from me. In fact, the boy is quite gifted, and he has been watching me teach Kung Fu for quite a long time. If he follows me, he will surely succeed in making his career as a martial artist." Madam Nung was very pleased to hear that and said that if Chan Hua Shun agreed to accept her son, she would not hesitate to allow her son to take up studies of martial arts. It's got a nice picture of Master Yip on the dummy. So there you go. That's a great Kung Fu story, isn't it? You can sort of see that story happening in your head. What a unusual little fella. At the age of 9, finishes his schoolwork and he goes, instead of roughhousing with the other boys, he preferred to write poetry and paint. So he's a very artistic soul, and this touches me because even though, I've always been an athletic sort of person, I love to write, I love poetry, I love painting. And it's part of my theory of Wing Chun is that the artist's mind is the same mind as the Nim Dao. It's that ability to enter into the visual mind, and it's a special thing because it's not just about painting, it's about sort of downloading inspired thinking. You feel, once you get past the beginner stage in art of just being able to, make things look like you want them to look, which can take a few years, but past that, some people either just keep painting stuff that people can see and relate to, and they often do quite well for themselves financially, but other artists like me, not so interested in that. The art becomes a spiritual quest. Once you feel this, it's like a precognizance, as if things come to you instantly but wholly formed, and solutions to things come to you, boom, like whole. They're not like you thought it out, they just sort of come. That's what artists live for, because it feels like you didn't make it up. It's like it's come from a far greater consciousness than your own. And in Wing Chun, and I think in real Kung Fu generally the same thing applies, and it's not a coincidence that a lot of these great masters were actually artists, poets, calligraphers in the Chinese style, beautiful writing, because it's a sort of a Zen mind. It's that no-mindedness mind which you use in art and poetry, like real poetry usually is not laboured over. It comes like when the poem sort of is just there. This is a worthwhile subject for anybody who's interested. You know, look into Japanese and Chinese calligraphy, because I say Japanese because the Japanese learnt from the Chinese and took it to a high level, and the Chinese acknowledge that. And the wonderful tradition of Chinese painting, everything from little birds and flowers right up to mountains. And I've got a wonderful painting in my quoon you've probably seen if you had your eyes open. I'll talk about that a bit more sometime. But yeah, there you go. And I didn't really realise that Yip Man was a painter until this morning when I was preparing to read this to you, and I thought, oh, that's sort of cool, because my Sigong, my grandmaster, the master of my master, Jim Fung, Sigong was a calligrapher, and the master who I consider the most senior master in our lineage, I call him Sibak, which means my master's older brother sort of thing, is Sibak Frederick Mo, who lives in New Zealand, but he trained with Sigong Chu for many, many years. He started about 1955. It's a long time, older than me. And he's a wonderful calligrapher, and he always posts Chinese paintings, beautiful Chinese paintings, on his Facebook. So there you go. A bit of a mystery for you, boys. And if you really don't think art's got anything to do with it, please comment below and tell me why you think that, and maybe we could have a discussion. Anyway, there'll be more about Master Yip. I'm sort of dedicated to re-finding him, because here in Australia, in our particular lineage, we always hugely looked up to Sifu Jim, and through him we looked up to Master Chu Shong Tin, and then especially when Sifu passed away, people started to go to Hong Kong, train with Master Chu Shong Tin, and he became the real focus and epicenter of our thinking, and he still is. His writings, his legacy, what he passed on to his students, what they've passed on to their students, that's what keeps us going. But Master Yip is a bit forgotten, and I think that's sort of sad, because I have told you in other videos, a good Chinese mate of mine told me that Sigong told him that when you touch Master Yip's arms in Chisao, they were super light, but you felt like there was 100 tons of rock hanging above you, about to just crush you. And that's Nimlik, that's the real thing. It's an uncanny power. It's a sort of a sense of power that's not like somebody pressing on you or having big muscles or looking scary and scowling. It's this gentle scholar, painter, poet, thinker. He touches you and you just get this awesome feeling. And that's also why I think the stories about the rooftop fights in Hong Kong, you hear about Yip Man's students fighting people and beating them, but maybe taking a minute to beat them or whatever. And the stories about Chu Shong Tin was that he would go to the fights and he would hit somebody once, and that was the end of the fight. And one guy who was more experienced fighter didn't want to fight him. As soon as he got close, he said, "No, you're way above me. I'm not fighting you." And I believe it. He wasn't like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He had that power emanating out of him, that chi, that real kung fu force. And it is a thing that the conscious mind doesn't understand, but the subconscious does. When animals either like somebody or don't like somebody, children are like that. Even on a spookier level, you know, they talk about dogs and animals acting weirdly when there's a UFO appears somewhere, some strange object, or, you know, something like that. It's akin to that in that it's not a sort of a everyday sense that, especially in the West, that we accept as real, but it's a real thing when you experience it from somebody that has that power. I've only felt it once or twice with a couple of very senior guys. I knew I was dealing with something much more than just being relaxed. It was an energy and a sort of a vibrating energy, and everybody who was close to Qigong, unfortunately I didn't get to meet him personally or train with him, but I was too broke. When I could have done it, I was having kids and I had no money. I was an artist and just wasn't enough work coming in. But people have told me, who I believe, about, you know, the feeling, that energy coming out of him, moving down their arms. You know, my mate and teacher Ivan Howe told me hold his arm and you could feel it moving under the skin like a mouse or something. It was actually physically pushing you off, and he wasn't moving at all. There's something going on there, a vibrating energy. So there you go. Master Yip had that, and I've heard people have said, oh, Master Yip Man didn't have Nimlik. I don't think that's possible. You know, he trained for over 60 years. I can't tell. I don't know. I wasn't there, but I think it's, you know, people get ideas in their head, but not necessarily true. But I just want to look at what I can find about him and share it with you guys, because he is our great grandmaster, or great grandmaster, or great grandmaster, depending on how many levels of students down you are from him. All right. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for supporting me and coming back to my channel. If you're here at the end, I love you. I appreciate it. I know I'm not going to have 1 million people on my channel, or even 10,000 would be lovely, but I don't know. I don't think I'm sexy enough to gain the modern audience, but I hope those of you who listen know that I'm passing on my love of Kung Fu. I'm passing on the secrets of Kung Fu that I've been very honoured to be taught, or to learn about, or to understand, or even I've come up with a few things myself that I think are very, very powerful. So thanks for listening. And if you get a chance, tell other people about me. Say, check out old Dave, you know, he's got 160 videos. Surely you can find something of interest in there. And last but not least, I've said this so many times, but I am going to actually make an online course and some kind of book. I've got a science fiction novel that I'm working on getting published right now. Another book about the Viking Age and the, you know, sort of superpowers in the Viking Age. And my Wing Chun book that I want to make. Wing Chun's super important in my life. So it will happen. If you keep encouraging me, it'll probably happen a bit quicker. Okay. See you later.